There is emerging on the face of the earth a new human, an infinite human, and that infinite human is you. Join Elizabeth Monroy weekly for enlightening discussions, multidimensional journeys, profound meditations, and empowering visualizations as we co-create the new consciousness renaissance together with other blossoming infinite human beings who are shifting the old paradigms of our broken, fragmented, finite 3D Earth and alchemizing it into a more expansive, unified, loving, infinite reality by reclaiming their true divine infinite power within as the co-creators of the new infinite Earth. Join us weekly for the Infinite Human Talk Show, hosted by Elizabeth Monroy, every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time.
And hello, my divine, infinite human beings, you're all that is, ever has been, and ever shall be. And welcome to the show. And we are, covering a topic that is so intense and so timely and so needed to be covered right now that it's a miracle that we're even on. I lost power in our area just like a few minutes before this. It just came back on. And I myself have been in crisis, physically. I think last week I talked about the solar thing, but literally I thought, if anyone knows about thyroid, that's what kind of drives women insane throughout our history. Most of the women were in the insane asylum because we always are having targeted and problems with our thyroid. Well, it's always been a problem with me, and my TSH level went up to about 100 Saturday. Which, if anyone knows what that means you are in it throws so many hormones out that you are in a constant state of fight and flight, of like fear, panic attacks for, without ever being able to do anything. So um I'm here, not all together, but getting it together and managing it. Um because I think it's really important. Now, I don't want to spread fear, and I know the first part of this, oh, don't be so negative, and I almost didn't want to approach it, but we're going to talk about the dark flowering that is the dark flowering of fiction that is really at the core of everything. It's underneath this whole, the dark side, the fallen angelics and the divine angelics, and the reclaiming of our path of ascension. So we're going to talk about that. And in the second half, we're going to talk about bright flowering. We're going to talk about the good stuff. But I really think if you're like me, and you should be, because, it's like when you have something wrong with you, like my thyroid, you don't know why, what's going on. You need to find out so you can do something about it. So, you need to diagnose the situation properly so you can take the appropriate action. And this is the name of the game at the most profound, deepest level of what is really happening right now on our planet. We're in this war. Now, I don't want to drag you into the war. The whole point of this is to raise your frequency so you're above. You're not even participating in a frequency where you're not fighting against anything. You're just bright flowering being, your fullest essence, your fullest Christic beingness to its max. And just by being that, you're just above it all, and you're just doing your job and spreading that wonderful energy, and really being creating the pathway of this whole series of ascension steps that we're taking back to our home, as the new earth's rise. So with us today is our wonderful, beloved guest who's been here so many times, such a knowledgeable person, and she has a lot of very clear, concise information to ground you in this. We're going to bring her on, and she's going to share it with you. And then, the second part, we'll talk about the bright flowering. She's going to talk to us about dark flowering. Olivia, welcome back.
Hello. It's nice to be back. And as always, it's lovely to have such interesting conversations that, in a way, I would say they are supposed to inspire everyone with also kind of, being on their own path towards remembrance. And I guess a good way to start, I just wanted to mention, like, in context of like the physical sensations, I've been having lots of that as well.
Well,
Mostly
first of all, tell
Okay.
us about you again for those who aren't
Okay.
familiar with you, okay?
So, okay, I've done that so many times. So,
Yeah.
about 5 years ago or so, I have experienced the awakening of my third eye while also being actually on kind of like a journey towards self-healing, because there's been certain chronic diseases that I've had and nobody really could find a diagnosis, and
Mhm.
all the medication was kind of messing everything up even more. So I kind of went through different stages of kind of trying to work it out by myself, try to find that universal cure for myself. And on that way, I have experienced the awakening of something that I prefer to call the eternal ancient eyes rather than the third eye, because it's a certain type of the vision that is more focused on finding the internal distortions within you that you can effectively transform through the use of the eternal creation frequencies in order to find a way towards your own, let's say, self-sending. I like to call it this way, that we are not ascending, we are self-sending. We are the ones that are finding our own connection to the source point. So ever since then,
Beautiful.
I've been a teacher. I've been kind of trying to guide everyone towards this self-work that I've been talking about. And also I'm working on individual sessions, trying to kind of find the right solutions for any kind of issues that the people are struggling with these days. And I would say there's a lot of these problems because, in a way, when you mentioned that we are at, let's say, a state of a conflict on the planet, I don't like to call it war, because that's a very strong word that carries that very heavy frequency kind of in it. Something that I do feel is that right now there is this big bipolarity manifesting on the planet, because we are having the dark flowering and we are having the bright flowering. And in a way, it's almost like an internal conflict that is also happening within us, because of the fact that since we have been under many targeting agendas for centuries, and we didn't quite know how to manage it for a very long time, until this very specific time when we are having the host and we are finally getting to that stage where many things are possible, many things that have not been possible for a long time. In a way, we can embrace our bright flowering, but we can also effectively transform our dark flowering, so that we can, in a way, unify the polarities, clear that yin yang overlay that has been within us for a very long time, and be able to do miracles.
Oh, excellently said. Well said. And yeah, just for clarity, and I just wrote a newsletter about this. It's on my website, www.infinitehuman.com. And I would say this has been an experiment, a test mess that really started 260 billion years ago, just very briefly. And we were invaded, by a parallel universe that really wanted to just feed off of us. So, we've been having, let's not say a war, let's say almost like a chess match, an external creation. And, we do our move, the Guardians would do their move against all the moves that we just call them the parasites or the fallen angelics would do. And this has been going on to the point where actually in 2011 we pretty much lost. So because infinite is vastly, of course, infinite, and all this other stuff that circumvents, that does not go along with the natural law of one, which does not honor free will, is finite. Okay, infinite finally said that's enough. We're just going to cure this because we can't keep this going on. So I guess it would be almost like you could think of it as a secreted an internal kind of solution that came from the cosmea realms, from the highest of highs, and many people incarnated directly from that that deity plane, the true deity plane, that level of highness of high, to come here and be here in this very, very powerful time. And we switched from working with the light body, which many people, the light body, the DNA, the Christ of light body, because that had been infected in this chess game. And we began to move inwardly and work with the internal plasma creations. And so, it's not really a war because actually the plasma has been released and we are ascending. The question really now is, how many people are they going to try to pull with them through this whole, reversing the plasmas? Now they've learned how to reverse the plasmas, so they're trying to dark flower people who have gone beyond the chakra system that we're familiar with, the light Lotus system that we're familiar with, and they begin to bud their plasma, uh, lotuses that are coming online. So this is kind of different because tell me, Olivia, isn't it true? It seems to, especially they are seeking very highly encrypted, FIMs or what we call. So do you want to
So,
explain a little bit?
I think that's something that you mentioned, that the plasma body is the internal body and the light body is the external body. This makes
Mm,
everything more serious here because
mm.
when we are talking about the light body distortions, such as metatronic reversal, or maybe your chakra is running on the opposite spin, right now there is really no problem to fix it. You can just do it with your internal plasma frequencies. However, the problem becomes more serious when you're dealing with the dark flowering because this is the distortion on the level of the internal body. So in a way, it is also internally affecting us. Some of the things that I listed as the symptoms of the dark flowering also actually refer to the changes in behavior and the fact that in a way we are kind of reversing the virtues. In a way, the dark flowering is the condition of the reversal of the wheel of virtues that are, after all, these primordial principles that we all should follow in order to reconnect with the source point and in order to also achieve the state of the bright flowering. It also comes down not just with the energetic work, but also with that very specific co-creation with the primordial virtues. So, mhm.
Well, first let's talk about, and then we'll talk about how it works. But who, from what? Okay, first of all, who? Can you explain more? Like, who is their target? Basically, because isn't it the highest levels at first because they want the most genetically encrypted souls so they can actually track them. They've been tracking them from lifetime
Yes.
to lifetime. And the ultimate goal is to inhabit, oh, don't get scared here, but possess it, to possess their bodies so they have a lot of power.
So I would say that there are a couple of groups that are targeted by the dark flowering. That would include people that, let's say, are referred to as the FIMS, that are born with certain parts of their plasma body activated. And very often they are targeted through something referred to as the evil twin effect, where, a certain inserted individual comes into their life and that individual is highly dark flowered. And usually through the sexual interaction, the dark flowering spreads to the targeted individual. So that's like a very common targeting procedure. From my perspective, the other individuals that are being targeted are the carriers of the K+8 factor as well as the Nomi gene. Before the individual awakens its Nomi gene, they try to hijack its plasma body template so that it never happens. So I would say that these are those main groups. Additionally, if you were targeted with the dark flowering in other incarnations, especially during Atlantis, there was this. It actually manifested as something called the Great Plague of Atlantis. People were getting sick for all sorts of things, but the cause was one: the degeneration of the plasma body template. And then a very common targeting technique is actually that they are trying to create like a timeline link between the fallen phantom Atlantean timeline where there was that massive dark flowering affliction going on and the present timeline, and that allows for the dark flowering to literally spread from one timeline to another. So this is also
Okay.
something to consider someone's incarnational past.
Okay, and one of the problems and one of the reasons I felt really guided, to do this broadcast is that a lot of these very, very FIMS, let's just say, are highly encrypted people have no idea who they are. And some of them are starting to wake up now just a little bit, like and get spiritual. And they're like, oh my gosh, I lived before. Oh, and they're starting to look out there at whoever they can latch onto as a spiritual teacher, the spiritual practice I have to do. I'm going to listen to this person on YouTube, or I'm going to follow this person. And it's a very dangerous and crucial time because they're so vulnerable. Right? Am I right with that? Okay.
Yes, definitely.
So let's talk about what it is, and how you can start feeling it, and then we'll deal with what we need to do to take care of it. So,
I mean, there's something to add here about that state of dormancy. It's actually related to dark flowering, because if these individuals are dark flowered, their plasma flows are kind of creating almost like a static field. Because if we wanted to compare the dark flowering to something, the best comparison would be to compare it to black goo, which is, this kind of like slimy black substance that sticks to everything. And if that black goo is also spreading into the DNA template, which started to happen since the 2020 reset, without getting into details, I guess everyone knows what I'm talking about, that literally creates static fields in bioenergetic as well as physical anatomy. And if the energy is not running through you, then you are not receiving much information about coming from the unified field into your morphogenetic field. So in a way, that exchange between you and the source is blocked, and that's why they struggle to awaken.
okay, and we're just going to take a really quick break and come back, and then we're going to talk about a little bit more about this. But don't worry, we're going to talk about what you can do about it. So this is not all negative. This is a very positive thing. Right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And welcome back to the Infinite Human Talk Show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Monroy, and I'm talking here with our beloved and treasured guest, Olivia, about the dark flowering affliction and how we can bright flower that. So Olivia, from what I understand, okay, just, you can add to this, but okay, we basically have, a chakra system, which most people, even the New Age movement is very aware of, but within that, we also have, a beautiful, right, let's see, got my crown on here, but a lotus system of flowers, lotuses that actually pop when you bright flower. They pop, all over you, but you have them above your head, your crown chakras, and all your chakras in there. They're, all around you. They're in the front, they're in the top, they're in the back, they're underneath, and they're beautiful living lotuses, not the flower of life that people call, like, that's really the daisy of death, but they're living, breathing, circular lotuses that feed from source and go back out. And when you begin to bright flower, they all open up all over you and just, breathe in this plasma and allow you to bring it in from source and ground it and create a plasma flow to those around you, which is very helpful and to actually form shields with other people who carry this. But the problem is when you start budding, a lot of times these, okay, fatally, all right, so this are the people from really originating from the Borgia parallel universe. Sometimes we think of them as the Borg, like on Star Trek, very AI infested beings. And they have now learned to, they've taken over the violet ray and they've reversed it. And so they've run reverse plasmas. And what they do is they get into your field and they begin to, and can you go into more detail with that about what happens?
I mean, so the way that I've always seen it as well is that if someone wants to fix their chakra system because they clearly feel that like their solar plexus is blocked or their crown chakra is not working properly, I've always seen the lotuses to kind of be almost like manifestation templates for the chakra system. So even if you wanted to heal your light body reversals, you cannot do that unless you heal your plasma body template first. And whenever I've been working with clients, I've always been seeing that there's the way that usually they are trying to come in is that they actually very often use AI in order to kind of send these waves of black goo that are kind of trying to start to infiltrate the lotus.
Yes.
Yes. Another thing that I've seen is that
okay, I'm sorry. I gotta stop you here
Okay.
because okay, I just got kicked off of Facebook again. I mean, I've had 7 different Elizabeth Monroys. Every time, now thank God, Peter Monroy is kind of like my host. He's my twin soul, and I ride through him, and he's protected, but I'm always targeted. And I put a question on. It was the Know Me Seed Failsafe group that Eon Park runs, and Eon Parks has been on here, and I said, could it be that they are running dark flowering plasmas through AI, through the movies we're seeing, from the video games, from, just the AI programs that are coming out and have a huge plan agenda to even go deeper with that. And I got so many responses because I think I love that group. It's very intelligent people. And one woman was talking about her son who was completely dark flowered and she finally brought him back, but he was on the board of insanity. So we're going to talk about next the signs of it so you can be aware of that. But as soon as I post that question, bam, click, I was locked out of that account. So I knew I was onto something. And that's why I knew we had to do this. Remember, I was just going to do 2 parts. I said, we've got to really go into this because, and it's in my newsletter about this reset to AI and how it's all about getting you to be on there and to dark flowering you. So we're going to see what is happening and then what can we do to shield ourselves so we don't pick up all that crap in the phantom lines connected to artificial intelligence. Okay, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt, but
Oh, good. So I wanted to say that in more advanced stages, what happens is that the entity starts to come in directly into the field, and it's literally kind of like getting stuck in the lotuses. It's almost like trying to merge with the lotus anatomy. And that's when it's becoming really serious because that entity starts to kind of like invade the plasma body, the light body, and that's when the targeted individual is very, very affected by it already. However, from my perspective, the dark flowering can be easily stopped. And in here, we need to look for a frequency that cannot be affected by the dark flowering. And for instance, that would be the energies coming from the Earth's Know Me seed, which are located in the Earth's core. And we can almost perceive the Know Me seed as like the eternal spark of the planet. And what I have been always teaching to my students is bringing in that rainbow plasma, running it through your lotuses, which have 12 petals, but they are on the front, but they're also on the back, on the sides, above and underneath, as you said. So it's kind of like as if that lotus has 6 directions. So you spread these rainbow plasmas through all of the directions of your lotus. And you can even create like a buffer around it, kind of like a rainbow bubble around each lotus. to
Okay, but before we get into that, okay, let's go step by step. What is it? How can you tell you or someone around you that you love, especially like with the kids? This
Mhm.
is a mother who was the kids are always on the games and all
Yes.
that stuff. Okay, so what does it feel like? And you tell me mechanically, the mechanics of it, and then I'll tell you my own personal experience because I have definitely been part of it, and then
Okay,
we'll talk
so
about steps to get it.
I
Yeah.
will tell from my experience what are the most common symptoms I've seen. Because I guess, like, the way that I always see it is that there's just a lot of that black goo, as if, like, you have this kind of like extra layer, like an overlay to your auric field, and it's just emitting that darkness that is almost like paralyzing you. It might give you these very cold chills, this kind of chills that you're getting if you sense like a spirit near you. However,
Mhm.
there's more to that. For example, you can see it in someone's eyes. If the eyes of a person who is dark flowered are getting very, very dark, that is a symbol, that is like a symptom that there is something bad happening here. If someone is less sensitive to emotions, if that individual becomes a little bit like almost psychopathic, that is also a sign of it, because the person is kind of picking up that reversed fatally consciousness. Narcissistic personality, that's also one, because what happens during the dark flowering is that your sympathetic nervous system gets activated, and it's like you're running fight flight mode all the time. It's about you and your needs and your survival. You don't care about others because you need energy. You need to take the energy from some source, because the dark flowering is progressively disconnecting you from your personal source point. So
And I think many of us have had experiences with narcissistic
yes,
personalities. So
yes. So
yeah.
that would be one of the symptoms. Um, Another thing I would say is that it's almost like there's actually a lot of spiritual light workers that are not aware that they are dark flowered, and sometimes they keep getting the calling to go somewhere and spread the codes, and at the same time they are just calling in different egregores, like archangels, angels, and all these strange entities. That's another symptom of it, that something is going on, because they're almost like trying to, instead of freeing the grid, they're just trying to entangle it into something just to get more energy. So the main symptom would be that that person is always in some way searching for a source of quantum.
Yes.
So
Okay.
these are my observations.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna because what happened, and I always like to um refer people to the source. Okay, infinite source, of course, directly, which is where I get all my information. It all comes, but Arias.com, and Hostmasters is her most recent one, and she just did a wonderful, beautiful activation in her new location, which really stops the dark flowering. So, I'll put that on there too, and then in the second part, Olivia can share with you what she does, but this can be stopped. But I want to share with you that after this, I did the activation. Plus, with I do think the solar plasma, all this energy coming from the sun and from the Nomi seed now is really, even people that don't know what's going on, it's just helping them to clear that. But when you clear it, it can be really intense. And I think I realized, okay, my personal story is pretty interesting, and it like all just clicked. I've been just painting flowers everywhere, and wearing flowers and being so into the bright flowers, and I felt so much was purging. I mean, just purging so fast. I was having one healing crisis after another, and I finally got the clarity to see. And also, I understand the whole failsafe program much better, because there's a lot of people in the Christic movement who are very attached to the freedom teachings before the shield split, and they are still working with the light body, and they are becoming susceptible to that. So we're just going to take another short break and come back, and we're going to talk about what that it feels like to us and in the external world around us. Okay, so come right back, because the next part's really important.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
And welcome back. I'm Elizabeth Monroy on the Infinite Human Talk Show. We're talking about dark flowering, the dark flower affliction with Olivia. And okay, we're getting into the deep, dark, and dirty right now. And we're just going to keep going without a break. And then in the second part of this, we'll get to the real good stuff about how to end it. But first of all, I think you need to start becoming aware of if you can recognize it in yourself and in others. And first of all, if you do see it in yourself, it doesn't mean you're bad, you're evil, you've done anything bad. In fact, it's usually the contrary. It's usually they go after very highly encrypted people who have come here, many of them directly, like I said, from the highest levels. They have the highest package of 44, strands of DNA. They've come here out of service, but before they've started to wake up, they're there. And so that's why a lot of starseeds have a lot of health problems, a lot of mental problems, And so I'm just going to share some of what's been going on with me, and then we'll talk about what I've seen in other people, and then Olivia can share, and we're going to talk about how they stepped it up now, and they're really seeding it, dark flowering through artificial intelligence. But I met my tantri, and now I realize the word tantri, twin soul, this lifetime, which is very rare. But yeah, we were called together pre, the whole failsafe, just to hold the earth and the time matrix together, which a lot of the work in the freedom teachings was all about. And I thank God I found him, because I know when I found him, he was being dark flowered. And in fact, I met him at the point, I wanted to leave him, I couldn't leave him, but he was so fallen. He had been with the wrong, he had been in, I was his third marriage. It was the wrong woman who just said, I'm rid of you. And when I met him, he said to me one day, I don't even know if I believe in God. And I'm like, oh my God, my name's Elizabeth, dedicated to God. All I was talking about was God and everything. And so I thought, whoa. But thank God, he was my tantri. He gave me the codes, to become a Yodin, and through our work together, and we did find other twin souls that helped us, and he got out of here, and he's ascending. He's helping me so much because he's like in the crystal cities on Earth. That we're creating our own kind of span grade there. So he's helping me now. But when he left, I was so filled with grief. Okay, that's a sign. mean, it was like I was in heaven ecstasy because if you've ever been with your twin soul, and you make love every day and you think each other's thoughts, and it's like you finally find that one person that understands you, and you've been all alone your life, and then all of a sudden they're not there. And I fell into the deepest, darkest despair. I was on sleeping pills, all kind, and that's another thing when you're on alcohol, sleeping pills. And I knew, and even the spiritual teacher that I had, her twin soul had ascended. She stayed, and I know she was starting to get dark flower and dark flower us. So Peter helped me find someone that grabbed me. They were in my group and brought me literally to Ashianidi's teachings. And so it didn't make sense to me. I didn't want to. I was like, it's like a vampire that's seeing light. You're like, yeah. But I just kept doing it because I trusted him. And it was like I began to assimilate. It took a long time, but I began to assimilate it more and more and more. And I got off all my prescription drugs, I balanced out my shop, everything. So I kept clearing it. And this last activation, I think that we did, flushed out something so powerful in me. I really feel like I have had a fatally white dragon attached to me for many, many lifetimes. And I talked to someone else. I don't want to share her story. She's going to come on the talk show. She's been on many times, but she had a very similar experience, and she kind of gave me a heads up on it. So Saturday was probably one of the worst days of my life. I was so filled with fear, physically because of my TSH, but of course, physical and mental, emotional are all tied in. I just felt like it left. I finally disconnected that final attachment, and it was like as soon as I did that, the fear disappeared, even though I still have the physical. I should be like manic right now because I've got a TSH of 50, which most people are in mental hospitals with that. But I'm here, I'm showing up, and I know it's on its way out. So there is going to be clearing that happens, but don't worry if you are attached to it. And people will, I feel like right now, it's not really a war, but it's kind of the separating from the wheat from the chaff. And if there is a war, we've won it. Okay, it's a done deal. But the fatally still wants to hold on to you. They've been tracking you for lifetimes. They want you so much. So a lot of you are going to see people coming into your life. I'll just say with my spiritual teacher, the same thing. She'll always send someone from the group to find me, no matter where I am on the planet. They will come, they will take me out to dinner, they'll try to bring me back into the group. All right, so you know what I mean, kind of like if you're a Jehovah's Witness and you leave, they always try to bring you back in until they finally give up on you, and then boom, they abandon you. Like, well, what happened? So do you want to share anything about that? Does that sound
I
familiar?
have experienced something similar on a personal level, but that was like over 2 years ago, where I've been doing the elemental clearing rooms technique, where you go through each one of the elemental chambers and you're clearing your elemental bodies. And I think it was at the stage of the earth element, because I've been always so ungrounded, like just absolutely not
Sure.
quite connected in a way as I should be.
Yeah,
And
well, there's a reason for that. Yeah.
yes, exactly. I mean, I've been always more like the air, fire element
Yes.
rather than
Yes.
rather than the earth element. However, what happened is that I kind of saw like a demonic entity kind of attached to my back. I would say that it was almost like a certain hybrid of like a Borgia, Draco, very strange looking being. And I removed it from my back. And I remember having like 2 weeks of just feeling down, feeling extremely like depressed, as if almost like I felt like I lost a part of myself, but I could see that I became much more grounded, softer, and kind of like not bothered with myself. Because also, like, if there is like this, if you have this inorganic hatred thoughts about yourself, if you have this inner chatter going through the back of your head, like how awful you are, how undeserving you are, blah, 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 blah. This is also connected to dark flowering that is trying to sabotage your mind, and that is almost trying to make you surrender, as you said. So I've been also having these very interesting experiences lately, that I've been having different individuals reaching out to me that I could sense that dark flowering energy from. But I suppose that in such cases it's better just not to interact and, focus on working in yourself, because such attempts to try to get into you, they are always kind of trying to show you where else might be an opening that could trigger something like that. So this was my personal experience of that. And ever since then, things have got much better. So I would say that this is something that in a way is right now happening on a massive scale, that we are clearing out these very deeply rooted possessions, infiltrations, whatever we want to call it. And that will also be very beneficial, not just for the energetic, but also the physical health, because there is
And-
usually a certain goal behind it. For example, in your case, I guess it was about the
yes.
self-expression.
Yes, and for the collective. Well, this fatally dragon entity was
Yeah.
literally attached, and I had a tooth pulled last year, so it was huge. All last year I was sick this time, and then it almost like ran all the way down here from the thyroid, and then through the center of me, like my really through my azare and heart of Ephema, that area, the solar plexus, all my digestive tract, my womb, all my sexual areas, and then just like kind of pulled it out through there and funneled it out and sent it back to space dust. Said you have a right to go back to where you return, or space dust. And it was terrifying, that moment. I usually don't have that hard of time when I get rid of things. But I was panic stricken. I couldn't even stand still. And Saturday, I couldn't stand still the whole day. I mean, if you can imagine not being able to even stand still, to have to walk, I couldn't be alone. I would walk up to people I didn't even know and just talk to them, because you're just and that had happened to me once before too, when my kundalini rose for the first time. But yeah, I'm sharing this because you people who are listening, you guys may be going through this or gone through it and you didn't know what was happening. And, I've had like a family member, I won't say who he is, but, it's just become so clear he's, into addiction very much, unfortunately. And, work, just dealing with like things that the family has and finances and stuff. 10 years ago when he pulled it on me, I was just like kind of intimidated. Now I don't even get intimidated when he, calls me things like, CUNT or stuff, because I know it's not him. I know it's that fatally energy coming through him. And I know, I love him so much, and I've tried, and I'm working the best I can with him and those around him, the other family members, and just cheering for him. But it's again that point where, well, it's a whole difficult thing we Christic people have when we love someone, but we there's well, I don't know. You want to talk about that? Because I think it's hard for
Yeah,
everyone.
I mean, it is very difficult, because very often when such, let's say, highborn souls are coming into a certain family line, very rarely they choose a family that is conscious. I was lucky enough to choose a family that was open-minded enough to kind of dive deeper into, all these teachings that we are talking about. However, usually a soul that is kind of, let's say, descending from the deity planes, or is the Adashi soul, they are actually choosing to incarnate into family lines of people that have a very difficult ancestral history,
Mhm.
that are very often under possession, infiltration, and very often these family members are literally manipulated to kind of directly target that very highborn soul. And
Mhm.
that and something that I've been also noticing is that the dark flowering may spread between family members if one is not staying true to their frequency, so to speak. So in a way, we are having such experiences with these different individuals that struggle with the dark flowering, because in a way, if we are working on the bright flowering process, we are providing them with that primordial blueprint, that can eventually help them with also overcoming the dark flowering problem and be able to also find their own source point connection. So that's the way that I see it, that in a way we kind of serve as these conduits of frequency that eventually trigger these, small sparks of awakening that will turn into that bigger
E-
way.
Exactly, and it's so beautiful. And I know in the last transmission, Asiana talked about how if 300 dark flowered people come into 10,000 people, they affect everything and they dark flower it. Well, yeah, but if if we're not 500, we become 600 and 700. We do the opposite, and I think that it's not a war. We're not fighting anyone. We are just doing our own inner work, and as we do exactly what we're talking about now, we're doing it for the entire collective, and we're the vanguard. It's probably the hardest right now because we're kind of tipping the scales, but that's the to me that's the ticket. That's my perspective, and I can tell it's yours too. Not fighting against someone and you're dark flowered man, get away from me, you are inflicted. No, it's just that we pop our bright flowers and we just shine and shine and shine to the point where we bleed into their reality and shift it. And those that have free will and choose not to, they will not want to be around us. They will just because that's not where they're at. So we have just a few more minutes, but I want to talk, and I've heard you talk in your other show about, especially nowadays, my God, I was a filmmaker at a film school, and I just closed it up, of course, with COVID, because the direction that films are taking, especially with the young people, the games, all those things are so dark. You were talking about people with like the dark eyes, you see that, in the films. And, so what is going on with all this? How is this black goo, this, dark flowering affliction being spread through the internet, and how can we recognize it? First of all, let's talk about that.
I mean, so I can describe one experience that I've had. I was generating an image through AI. I needed it for my classes, but of course, it's like there was a point where, like I created a certain protected space, and I felt like someone started to kind of attempt to breach that space. So the image was generated, and I looked at it, and I could kind of see with my inner eyes that kind of like black portal kind of trying to drain my consciousness. And when I kind of looked at that consciousness that was drained before I got it back, I could see these artificial fields, like these cubes, and almost like, if you have the Matrix movie and like all these people are kind of like in these kind of like artificial containers, and they are like fully ruled by the programs dictated by the artificial intelligence. It was more or less something like that. And you could sense something like, for example, if the actor in a movie is dark flowered or performed some dark magic ritual, it may get transferred to you. All sorts of games are connecting people to phantom universes. And if you have a very large soul fragmentation, meaning a lot of aspects of you are dragged into the phantom universe, then your bioenergetic field becomes weaker and you're more vulnerable to the dark flowering. Additionally, the problem with the black goo began also with, all sorts of GMO foods and the fact that they contain these nanoparasites referred to as the morgellons. And the morgellons are basically the ones that are kind of like they are manufacturing the black goo. The more of the black goo they spread, the stronger they become. So that's also another aspect of it, where the nanotechnology.
And of course, our recent round of the COVID, jibby jab
Yes,
juice. Yes,
that's
so
another aspect of it, of course. And along with that, so I would say that right now, as we are going through this process of transformation, everyone has at least a little bit of the dark flowering, because the
yes.
planetary grids still hold a certain amounts of it, and then depending where you live, the levels are higher or lower. So I would say 2 up to 3%, everyone at least has that level. But since the bright flower gardens are awakening on a planetary level, we are finally getting to that stage where we can fully clear it from our body, and we don't have to be worried that it will come back.
And I want to say too, a lot of people that are awakening now and they're like looking to like the YouTube or there's a lot of people who are coming to the forefront as leaders in the awakening movement, new spiritual Ascension gurus. It used to be the New Age movement. Now the Ascension movement's been completely co-opted too, and they're sprouting all this, Ascension, stuff. And I use sometimes 5G and Gaia just as keywords, but we're really on another path that I think will eventually bleed into that, But if they're just talking light body stuff, some of the people who are really attached to the freedom teachings, I've had them reach out to me and try to tell me all kinds of things about the current plasma is like octopus slime. And I mean, it was just, they
These
really
are
do
the
that because
fallen plasma beings, but that doesn't mean all of the plasmas are fallen.
yes, yes. So there is aspects of that, but you have to really get in there and start using your own noodle, using your own discernment, and learning to read the encryptions. Because there's some people I've had on this talk show, and they talk the talk, and I was really glad in the early days to have them on. Anyone that was just saying don't take the jibby jab or look at the governments, but now everyone that is like a lot of people are getting you just focus on how let's get revenge, let's take out these, and they're talking the talk, but you just if you watch them, if you listen to them, if you walk away from them, there's this feeling like just something doesn't click, something doesn't resonate. If you're getting that feeling, they're probably trying to black flower you. So I would say don't follow any one person, even Ashiana, don't just like blindly follow anyone. Take what you need, but also shield yourself, right? Shield yourself before you get on the internet, shield yourself before you participate in anything nowadays. Let's say you go out, I'm in Sicily, so every time you walk out, there's a festival or the piazza, people are all around, which is a nice thing. But I think we really need to shield ourselves, before we do anything, constantly to just keep the pristine, the cleanliness of our
And
own
let's keep in
spiritual.
mind that, shielding should never really come out of fear. It should just come out from that awareness that I want to look after my field, because
Mhm.
there are still certain individuals on this planet who are spreading the distortions forward, and I just don't want them
Yes.
in my field. So
Yeah, and I don't
let's
call
keep
it
mindful
shielding
about it.
really, because what it really is it's just a little to raise your frequencies. You kind of
No, I
constantly
call it
do
the
that.
spiritual hygiene. Just like you take a shower
Yes,
every morning, this is
yes,
also part of
exactly.
it, right? It should become a part of the routine, I think.
Yes, and then just shine on, pop those bright flowers, and the more you do that, it'll become contagious. It'll become the contagious cure for what we're going through. So, yeah, so that's really beautiful. So that's leading us into the next part that we're talking about. So you don't have to be full of fear, because fear just, fear is not good for anything. If you got fear, I had fear the other day. Oh, it's the worst emotion in the world. I would rather be grief stricken or anything than fearful, And but sometimes right now it's something that just has to be flushed out because it's been in our cellular level ingrained in us for so long. We're flushing it out completely now because this is the end of the end, and just self-love and just let the process happen, I'd say. As you start to purge the remnants of these dark flowers, you are going to have things that come up, but just let it come up, be okay with it. Any other advice about as you start to purge it and awaken it?
I think it's about realizing that once you start that purging process, whether that's dark flowering or the past lives, because that's also like a big trigger for many people, you have to
Mhm.
realize that there might be moments where you have the bad days and then when you have the better days. This is all a
Mhm.
part of the fact that if we've been stuck in this game for such a long time and now we are kind of transforming it, we need to clear out everything, all these reversed energies that have been manipulating us for a very, very long time. So that's kind of something to keep in mind, and in a way to stay consistent with what you're doing, to keep up a certain routine that will allow you to clear out anything that doesn't belong to your field.
And no, you're not going crazy. You're not dying. You're ascending inwardly. You're inwardly ascending. And, I was diagnosed as bipolar, so I had a whole lot of this going on until I actually, was connected with the teachings, the guardian teachings, and that helped me clear out so much of it. But, just like Friday the 13th, I was in heaven. It was one of the most beautiful, amazing days. I went to the city of love where the first, like the cult of the divine feminine was, and this beautiful castle. And it was wonderful. And then Saturday, I was in the throngs of fear. So, during this period, it might be this roller coaster, and just try to get his equanimic nemesis or whatever, centered and peaceful as you can, and know this too will pass. And I always tell myself when it's really, really bad, I said, this is good. I'm getting rid of it. I'm purging it all out. It needs to get out. So just let it get out, let all these emotions, and attachments, entities, even, just leave, you know, adios.
Basically,
Adios. Go back to God. Pardon?
Trust yourself, because something that I've been actually seeing a lot of people who've been like thinking that they have a mental illness lately. There's been even a very lovely woman coming to me, and she basically had a dream that her soul went out of the body because it was taken away. And, she went crazy because it was just so real to her. And, there it all started, the medication, the psychiatrist, while it turned out that she actually was not wrong. And all she needed to kind of get back her sanity, her sense of kind of, let's say, confidence and empowerment, was to basically just reclaim that soul once again. So there might be a lot of like mental illnesses kind of thing manifesting right now even more, but that's because of how intense the changes on the planet are, especially with the solar activity, and how it is also shifting the way we are perceiving things. So it doesn't mean you're crazy, you're just having a different perception than the most.
No, and if you have to reach out to traditional medicine, just do it. I just had to do it for like twice this last week. One pill or one shot, cortisone or something. But I was that imbalanced, and I swear there was a moment Saturday that I had felt when this happened to me, like 20 years ago, when I felt like I was losing my mind, and that is the most terrifying thing that I think anyone can go through, because that is what it feels like to be Veda lead, because you actually end up losing your possession of your body. And when you go into fall, you are so fragmented. So Ascension is the antidote. Is back to wholeness or holiness. Is back to having complete and total surrender and becoming one with divine infinite source, and letting infinite source lead you, rather than feeling fragmented and pulled by whatever's out there, different entities. So you can do this. You got this. Okay. And if you feel that stuff, it's not happening, it's purging. And in the moment, it may be touching on lifetimes or moments when you did really feel like you were possessed or whatever, but it's clearing out. So you can do this. I think that's the most important thing we can say to ourselves during it. I got this. Yeah, I was just driving. I was just, God help me, God help me, God help me, God help me. I do that in certain moments of crisis, and then I just ended up with the right people, talking to the right people. Someone did some energy work on me. I just met them. It was like I pulled in whatever I needed. So, and you have so much help right now. You are being so divinely protected and guided. And, I hope this transmission that we've just done is part of that. So, Olivia, any closing words before we move to the good stuff and that will be on the podcast next week. And if you're with us live, we're going to do it on YouTube on another channel. Any closing words? How we can get in touch with you too?
Well, I'm just looking forward to doing the part 2 because I think it's going to be amazing. So anyone who's interested in learning more, we are going to be starting very soon. And let's just keep in mind that right now we have finally enough quantum for us to be able to do this and to bright flower the planet.
All right, bright flower the planet. That's the word we're going to. Starts with us. We pop our bright flowers and we bright flower the planet. So until next episode, bright flower the planet. And ciao from now. Thank you for joining us. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Olivia.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Infinite Human Talk Show with your host, Elizabeth Monroy. We hope today's episode has inspired you to join the new consciousness renaissance and be the change by reclaiming your true divine infinite nature within and becoming an infinite human and a co-creator of the new infinite earth. Tune in next week for another empowering episode. Until then, have an infinite week.